This video was sponsored by Raycon.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to episode 6,488,921 of BizarroCast, the only podcast for and by Arlos from across all universes. I'm Barlow.
I'm Marklo.
I'm George Lowe.
And I'm Lilo.
As it will be for eternity in all timelines stretching in every temporal direction, our podcast is sponsored by Raycon. Their everyday wireless earbuds are the official earbuds of BizarroCast because they're so sleek and low profile and don't stick out of your ears like other brands. And thanks to this assortment of gel tips, they fit comfortably into the ears of any Arlo in any universe, guaranteed. These earbuds can last up to 8 hours on a charge and up to 32 hours using the convenient charging case, so you can bring your music with you anywhere and anytime.
Which is especially helpful in the universes where Arlo became a night shift security guard at a coffee filter factory.
A lot of those, for some reason.
The sound quality is great, they pack a surprising amount of bass, and they're super easy to sync up to Bluetooth, even when cosmic interference from Arlis Ultimatus passes through your dimensional plane.
May his fuzziness be forever loved and feared. Everyday earbuds are about half the price of other premium wireless earbuds. They come with a 45-day free return policy if you ever change your mind, and you can get 15% off by going to buyraycon.com/Arlo. Many thanks to Raycon for their support. In this episode of BizarroCast, we discuss the question that's been plaguing Arlos for time immemorial. Where is the mustard?
Crunchy!
Hello there, my wonderful friends. Wait a second. There's a strange feeling in the air. My fur is standing on end. Could it be that it's happening? It?
Surely you know what I'm talking about. Even way back when the Switch launched, there was this idea. It basically boiled down to, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if Nintendo made a bunch of cool games for Switch, then a few years later they made a bunch of cool sequels? I mean, given the context, it felt like a natural outcome. Mario and Zelda in the first year? That's already two major tentpole series out of the way, right out of the gate. Then in 2017, there was also Splatoon 2 and Xenoblade 2, and at E3 they revealed Kirby and Yoshi. It was clear that Nintendo was going to effectively run out of major IPs very quickly. I know I probably scream for endless sequels more than most, but this wasn't only a me thing. Even from a pure and simple business perspective, the idea of heavily leaning on sequels in the latter half of the Switch's life was one that materialized on its own, because it just made sense. Sequels are easier to make. They make Nintendo more money. We have more to play, yada yada yada. Then as the Switch aged, the idea only made more and more sense. They hit us with Smash, Animal Crossing, Luigi's Mansion, Pokémon's, all this big stuff from well-established series. And now, here in the year of 2021, it seems we might be standing on a precipice. The Switch has officially entered the second half of its life. Nearly every major Nintendo IP is or will be represented on the system, and we already have a substantial batch of sequels on the horizon.
Perhaps I'm looking too deep into this, as Arlos are wont to do, but I think the winds of change just might be a-blowin'. I think I just might be feeling the rumblin' I've been hoping to feel for years now. I think that 2022 might just be the year of the sequel. And furthermore, it might just open up the floodgates for more sequels to hit us in a mighty deluge through the rest of the Switch's life. Or, we might just get, some sequels. Like a good amount. Not everything has to be extreme,
First things first, let's take a look at the sequels we've already got coming. Assuming nothing is delayed, we've got Breath of the Wild 2 and Splatoon 3 confirmed for 2022. We've also got Mario and Rabbids 2, which is technically coming from Ubisoft, but since it's a Switch exclusive with Mario on it, I'll count it just as I did the first game. So right there, we've already got 3 major sequels slated for next year. Those 3 games alone are enough to make you go, whoa, there's a bunch of sequels coming in 2022. Oh, but there is more, my friend. Even if those are the only 2022 sequels that have been confirmed thus far, the potential for more is massive! Because development was restarted in 2019, we definitely won't be seeing Metroid Prime 4 released in 2022, but what about the other game we've been waiting years for? Every year that passes without us seeing so much as a glimpse of Bayonetta 3 feels more ridiculous than the last. But assuming there have been no similar development problems, an actual reveal does become more and more likely. 2022 will probably mark the game's 5th year of development. I think there's a mighty fine chance it will finally show up. And while we're talking about Bayo 3, it's important to note that when I refer to sequels, I don't just mean direct sequels to other Switch original games. I mean, most of Nintendo's IPs are decades old. When we get a new game, it's not always a sequel necessarily. It's just like the next one. But while I do think direct sequels are important here, I'm also referring to new titles in series that have already been represented on Switch. Bayo 3 will be the first exclusive Bayonetta game on Switch, but the first 2 games have already brought the series to a whole new audience on Switch. 2 in particular got a new lease on life after debuting on the struggling Wii U. With all that said, Bayo 3 might just bolster 2022's sequel-y theme. And still, all this goes deeper. Even beyond confirmed titles, now we're coming to a time when tons of series with games already on Switch are becoming ripe for new entries. And even more, many of them already have strong rumors surrounding them. Monolith Soft is always working on the next thing, and the Xenoblade 3 rumors have been rampant. Most of them have been fairly small, but all added up, they paint a pretty convincing picture of at least some kind of Xenoblade title in 2022. Similarly, the Kirby community has been abuzz with rumors of a new game. I mean, every time the Kirby devs do interviews, they hype up their next project and talk about how it's going to be the pinnacle of the series. And thanks to tidbits found in data mines, everyone's all hooked on the idea of a 3D Kirby. Even if none of those rumors end up being true, and it's another 2D title though, it's entirely reasonable to think that such a game might hit in 2022. That's 4 whole years after Star Allies. And I'm sure the Kirby team is eager to further capitalize on the Switch's huge success. Fire Emblem, same thing. Technically, the rumors talk about a remake of an older game rather than a brand new one, but I'm still going to count that because 1, the series has only recently grown in popularity, so whatever they remake will be new to most people, and 2, this is my video and I will spin anything in any way I can to support my thesis. Then of course, if we're talking about rumors, we can't forget the rumor that a new DK game is on the way. This is another case where it probably technically wouldn't be a sequel, but seeing as Tropical Freeze easily outsold its Wii U counterpart and also reached a whole new audience, any new DK would feel somewhat like a sequel, at least a 2D one. Oh ho ho, and we especially can't forget about Pikmin. Pikmin 3 hitting Switch made me doubtful that we would be seeing 4 this generation, but considering it's allegedly been in development for years, technically it could come at any time. Pikmin 3 Deluxe established the series on Switch. It gave a whole new bunch of people a taste of what Pikmin is. So a sequel in 2022 isn't out of the question whatsoever. We're digging even deeper now, because yes, there is more. There are even more series with tremendous sequel potential that we could see represented in 2022. There have indeed been a few rumors floating around about Mario Kart 9, but none of them have felt particularly strong. However, I still maintain that the game existing is a strong possibility. As I've said before, even though Nintendo could just sit back and let 8 Deluxe keep selling, it's hard for me to imagine them not creating a brand new game for one of their systems, especially one as successful as the Switch. Every system gets a Mario Kart, and there's a fine chance that they had no idea 8 Deluxe would sell so well, so they already got started on 9 and figured they might as well keep going. 9 could very well not happen, but I'm not willing to count it out just yet. And if it does happen, 2022 feels a little late for it, but still within the realm of possibility, especially if it was supposed to be a 2021 title, but got delayed by the pandemic. And especially if Nintendo makes a habit of starting off each system with a deluxe version of the previous system's Mario Kart, then releasing a new one a few years later. Just a thought. Then Super Mario Odyssey 2, what can I even say that I haven't said so many times before? We don't have any real rumors, but the first game is the best-selling 3D Mario by a country mile. Mechanically, it has so much sequel potential, and unlike most of Nintendo's biggest Switch games, it never got any substantial paid DLC. I mean, the DLC thing right there, like that's enough by itself to convince me that a sequel is coming. And again, if a sequel is coming, now's the time for it. The Switch has still got a good few years of life in it, but it's also been several years since the last title. This one is so ripe it could drop from the tree at any moment. And speaking of both Mario and ripeness, have you noticed that Nintendo hasn't made a new 2D Mario game in like a decade or something now? As with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe is selling so well that they could easily just let that one sit and be done with it. But a new title is still very much a possibility. It's another series that's been getting new titles on every system since its inception, so who knows? And finally, we've got all the Switch games that could potentially get sequels just because Nintendo wants to make them. 1-2 Switch sold pretty well, I could see that getting a sequel, why not? Ring Fit Adventure has been a massive hit. Paid DLC might be more likely, but if Nintendo announced a sequel that used the same peripherals, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. ARMS wasn't a big hit like Splatoon was, but it did show a lot of promise, so maybe Nintendo wants to try again with a bigger, beefier sequel? And hey, I guess we might as well mention Pokemon. Pokemon games come out all the time, so there's no big mystery there. Going off the usual pattern, we'll probably see Gen 9 in 2022. But hey, getting the next big generation instead of a remake or something, that's still kind of sequel-y, right? And Legends Arceus is like the next step in the Pokemon formula, so that kind of works too, I think. I don't know, let's just say yes. Let's just say yes, that those games both count, and that my point is correct and great. Now, I'll admit that when it comes to probability, very little is out of the question entirely. When we travel outside the realm of solid, confirmed titles, nothing is certain anymore. Breath of the Wild 2, Splatoon 3, and Mario & Rabbids 2 may very well be the only major sequels that grace our Switches in 2022. But that list of potentials is far too long for me to ignore. So many heavily rumored titles, so many that have been in development for years, so many series that are due for more entries. Even if it's true that none of them may materialize next year, it's hard for me to imagine that we won't get at least a couple of them. And if I'm right, and 2022 really does become the year of sequels, then I will be a happy camper. Because it will mean that I'm right. And everyone will come back to this video and tell me how right I am. But more importantly, it's the thing I'm always talking about. Sequels are win-win. My socks have already been knocked clean off by the Switch's library. Some of these games have firmly cemented themselves as all-time favorites. At this point, what's left to do beyond just giving us all a series of second helpings? Creating new IPs is one option, though Nintendo doesn't try to launch big new series very often, so I can't see new stuff totally filling up the schedule. And of course, there are still series that have yet to be represented on Switch, though I also don't see Nintendo just going down the list and hitting every single one. Nope, when it comes to really packing that calendar and keeping sales momentum strong, full sequels to popular Switch games and new titles in established series is the way to go. Though, unfortunately, if we're truly examining every possible outcome, there is one that's not entirely out of the realm of possibility, and thus we shan't overlook it. And I must say, the idea is a disturbing one. The Wii was a massive runaway success. Nintendo made money hand over fist with that little thing. And most of that money was made through royalties. See, when you own the platform, anyone who sells a game on that platform has to give you a cut. Nintendo did make a lot of money from the hardware itself and from their own first-party titles, but my little brain cannot fathom how much they made from everything else being sold on the system. Every Call of Duty port, every Just Dance, every Lego Star Wars, every shovelware party game, all of it funneled money into Nintendo's pockets. And while, in my humble opinion, it might have been wiser to ride this wave of success even further by developing more first-party titles, thus continuing to capitalize on the Wii's enormous install base, instead they elected to go with a different approach. They rested on their laurels. They just kinda stopped putting out a lot of games. I mean, the games did come in, little by little, but not nearly as many as I initially expected. In fact, I loved my Wii, but the slow trickle of big new games was partially responsible for me going and checking out what Xbox was doing. Is it possible that we're actually on the precipice of a big drop? Is it possible that Nintendo will pull another Wii with the Switch? Just kinda stop making games, because who needs to make more games when people are still buying your system and your previous games, and third parties are still funneling even more money your way? Well, it's a little scary because we've already seen signs of how the Switch's success has affected Nintendo. Exorbitantly high prices on controllers and accessories, a stubborn refusal to address the Joy-Con drift problem, subpar online services, titles with limited releases, straight up aggression toward huge fan communities, the list goes on. You might say that when you climb as high as Nintendo has, the only way to go is down. They've got a long history of mistakes, and there's no knowing what they'll do next. All that said, however, I'm feeling hopeful. Even if I don't like everything they're doing, I don't feel that the flow of titles is going to dry up. The last year or two of the Switch's life might be a little light as they develop games for whatever's coming next, but just based on what we already know about 2022, things are looking good. I think it's plenty likely that we're about to get a really nice chunk of sequels in 2022 and maybe even beyond. I mean, we're getting Metroid 5 and Metroid Prime 4. Famicom Detective Club and Advance Wars got remakes. New Pokemon Snap is a thing that happened. Nothing is impossible at this point. Steve is in Smash, okay? Steve is in Smash. Believe in your dreams.
But let me know what you think down in the comments. There's got to be a big wave of sequels coming, right? Like I said, my fur is standing on end. Either something's coming or... Oh, right. Or someone turned on the vacuum cleaner. Excuse me.
Stop!